I wish I could tell you this in person. This is one of my favorite stories, and it will really help you understand what a ribosome is and what a protein is and what the protein's job inside of a cell. So I went to Presbyterian College. That's kind of important to the story, but not really. But anyway, it gives you some context. But I went to Presbyterian. It's in South Carolina. And clearly, if it's Presbyterian College, it is a Christian college. Now, you don't have to be a Christian to understand the story. It's just, like I said, context. So I'm in biology class with one of my favorite ever professors. His name was Dr. Rishbeater. Rishbeater, we just called him Rishbeater. As an aside, he discovered a dinosaur out in Montana and got to name it because that species had never been discovered before. And we all were like, name it Rishbeater! And he named it after like the Greek words for what it looked like or something. But anyway, you can look him up. Anyway, it's that guy. So we're in class and we are frustrating him to no end about like, well, how does the cell know how to do that? And how does the cell know when it's time to do that? And asking all these dumb questions probably because we're probably not listening, but whatever. And so Rishbeater's like, time out. So the reason a cell knows how to do that, and then he gives it some like long name of a protein. And we're like, okay, write it down. And then we'd ask him another question, and he'd tell us some other name of a protein. That's why the cell does this, and that's how a cell knows how to do that. And he was giving us these, like, proteins sometimes are like letters and numbers. I mean, he knows them by heart, of course, because he's brilliant, and we're all like, 18-year-old nerds, whatever. And some, but not me. I just kind of hung back. Clearly smarter people in the class. And so he is, like, frustrated with us because he thinks we're not listening. So somebody, I don't know who it was, said, well, how are we supposed to know all these proteins? And he said basically something like, humans have like 20,000 proteins in their cells. You can't remember them all. I'm like, well, if we're not supposed to know them all, like, how do we know which ones to know? Because you don't. You just need to know what a protein is, a protein does. And I guess I'd made it all the way through high school and made it into college biology, and I still didn't really understand the role of proteins in a cell. And the way he described it, which I'm about to tell you, helped me and still helps me. And even when I talk to my friends about COVID and proteins, this helps them. So straight from Rishbeater to me, to you. So in the middle of class, he asked us a question that we thought had nothing to do with what we were talking about. He said, how many of y'all go to Sunday school? And we're all like, I'm sure there were people that like weren't Christians or whatever that were there, but it didn't matter. It's not important to the story. But still, we all kind of were like, yeah, we've done that. And he said, so when you like weren't paying attention and your Sunday school teacher asked you a question about something and you didn't know the answer, was there something you could always say and you were probably right? And we all were like, yeah, you could just kind of say Jesus and you're right most of the time. And he's like, exactly. If you're asking yourself a question about cells and you're like, well, how does a cell know how to do that? And how does a cell like make that? Or how does a cell know when it's time to divide? Or how does a cell, how does one organelle talk to another organelle about what it needs to do next? If you don't know the answer, just say proteins and you're right most of the time. And so we were like, oh, all right. So we'd be in class and asking a question like, well, can you explain that more? And he would turn around and be like, well, I mean, it's not Jesus. And we're like, is it a protein? And he would say, yes. And so it was just kind of a joke, I think, in our class. I don't think this is a story he tells year to year. I don't think it's like a PC like standard thing to be taught in biology. I think he was just frustrated with us and needed to communicate something. But man, it stuck. So proteins do work. If you are wondering, how does a cell know when it needs more water? How does a cell know how to dump more water? How does water leave a cell? How does an organelle know when it's time to divide? Like, most of those answers can be answered with proteins, at least for part of the answer. So proteins are just really big, complicated molecules that do work in cells. That's what they do. And ribosomes make them.